Welcome back to the Daily Drum on WHUR 96.3 HD2 and Sirius XM Channel 141. I'm Harold Fisher. Tonight we have a bit of a mixed bag of news about violent crime in Prince George's County. Homicides are down, but deadly domestic violence is up. What's driving the numbers in the wrong direction, and what are officials doing to address this disturbing trend? October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and joining me to talk about that and also to highlight some events taking place around the county is Aisha Braveboy, Prince George's County State's Attorney, the top prosecutor in Prince George's County. Madam State's Attorney, thank you so much for joining this conversation and talking to us.
Thank you so much, Harold. It's great to be here.
Thank you. So let me first run a few bits of information down to you. There have been 17 domestic violence murders in the county so far this year. And the number of domestic violence cases, including non-fatal shootings and assaults, has increased 13% over last year. Protective peace orders in the county are outpacing other counties in the state. Prince George's County averaging about 2,000 a month. And of course, we have in the news some striking cases of domestic violence that do not involve significant or partners, but involve family members. What's your take on where we are regarding this issue right now?
Well, let me just say that overall violent crime is down in Prince George's County, and that's something that we can be proud of, including an over 30% decrease in carjackings. I mean, that's tremendous work that we're doing to fight violent crime. And so on the streets, we have officers deployed. We are going hard on these cases in the courtrooms. We're getting good sentences. And so we're sending a very strong message through the criminal justice system. But the system that most impacts us is our family. It's the system of family. And what we're finding is that our families are in crisis. Many of them are suffering, oftentimes in silence because of the dynamics of what happens within families. And so we're now trying to get inside those households and provide real services to people who need it, because this issue of domestic violence is more than just intimate partner, which is what we normally think of as domestic violence. I mean, the picture in our heads often is a woman being abused by a man. But in the cases that we are seeing, especially in the homicide cases that we're seeing other dynamics, family dynamics, whether it's a parent abusing a child or in some cases a child being the abuser in the family. Also, step families. The dynamic of step families oftentimes is can be contentious, and that can rise to a level of violence. And then we've seen older adults who are victimized. One striking number that you did not mention was wrongful detainer cases. And I never thought of this until I was talking to the chief judge of our district court about what she's seeing. And she said, we're seeing a rise in wrongful detainer cases. And those are cases where individuals, and those don't make it to my office, they're not criminal cases, they're civil cases where individuals are residing in a place and the rightful owner no longer wants them to be there, and so they're asking them to leave. And in 2022 we had 209 such cases. In 2023 we had 596. The biggest driver of that, according to our the chief judge of our district court, is older adults, senior citizens, wanting their adult children out of their homes because they are in fear of their adult children.
Oh, wow.
So that was pretty striking to me, and I'm sure to you and your listeners, that this is occurring within the dynamics of family.
So what happens? How is that addressed? because you're right. I'm first of all, I've never heard of that situation, and um, the only thing that I can think about is not the fear, but okay, you're a grown kid. You know, you're 30 years old. You need to get a job, get out of my house, and start beating up all my food.
Right.
You know, I mean,
Yeah.
that's I mean, and it's funny, and I don't say it to be funny, but that I mean, that is as old as families. Okay,
Correct.
but this is different.
This is different. This is not just, hey, we want you to go and fly now. We have given you
Right.
all that you need. It's time for you to go and get it for
Hmm.
yourself. These are individuals who are oftentimes elderly, who probably need someone to care for them, but they are afraid of their children. Maybe it's because of abuse that they have received, whether it's physical, verbal, emotional, financial. We have seen those cases, those financial crimes cases, of course, that come to our office. But these are adults who should be able to live independently, who are still residing at their parents' home, but now instead of just being a nuisance, they are a danger. And so we want our seniors to know that we want to protect them, that they have rights, that if even if it's a blood relative, if they if they are not safe in your home, you can get them out. It is a process, that's a civil process, but they can do that. But oftentimes it's because something has happened, either an incident where they have been physically abused, or they have been threatened, or they have seen that their money has gone missing. There are reasons why parents want their children out of their homes, especially when they're seniors, because oftentimes they do need the support. They need someone looking after them and helping them out, but they're not going to risk their life for it, and they
Hmm.
shouldn't have to.
I do want to go back to the issue regarding um, the kind of deadly domestic violence that that we have seen in the county. And I remember, and I'm sure you remember as well, a handful of years ago, and this was even pre-pandemic, that Prince George's County had a really horrible year, and as it related to deadly domestic violence, and certainly one is too many. But talk to me a little bit about why these things happen, and specifically, this is the question that I have for you as a as a prosecutor. First of all, have you ever had an opportunity to speak to the perpetrator of a domestic violence killing?
I've not personally spoken to the perpetrator, and here's probably why. Even after an individual is convicted and sentenced, they do have appeal rights. So the likelihood that they're going to talk to someone like me is slim to none, because they don't want to in any way impact their ability to move forward with an appeal in the future. Um, what I can tell you is that I know people who have been abusers. Um, uh, some of them, have expressed, that they had substance abuse issues, or they were, dealing with things, mental health, that they didn't know how to control their emotions. None of these things are excuses, but they help us to understand what resources are needed in our community. I can tell you that we have done a really good job, I think, just as a nation, in messaging to especially women who are victims, who are disproportionately victims of domestic violence, that look, you can leave, love doesn't hurt, you can say all of those things, and we can provide safe houses and support systems and networks. But when the abuser is your blood relative, is your child, right? you cannot message leave your child. That's not something that's even doable, right? Because most of these children are under the age of 18. As parents and guardians, you're responsible for them, but they could be the abusive one in the household. Let me give you an example. At our press conference that we held last week to announce the launch of our initiative, which is a collaborative to end family violence, there was a speaker who was really a survivor of family violence. His son was a teenager when he shot and killed his mother. He shot and killed his younger brother, and he attempted to murder his father. Now, his father survived. That case was handled by my office. So if you can imagine, in talking to Mr. Oxley, and I know he doesn't mind sharing his name since he spoke publicly about it, Mr. James Oxley, who's a tremendous individual. And I don't know, I think, but God, right? I mean, that is the only thing that has kept him going is his faith. And his sense of purpose. And he's just an amazing man to share this with us. But his son, he was not only a victim and next of kin to two relatives, but he's also the father, the guardian of the defendant, right? So if you can imagine, what does justice look like in a case like this, right? On the one hand, the individual who's the victim, who lost two people who he loved dearly, is just upset and devastated. On the other hand, he's a father. And so he does still care and love his son. And he recognized there were issues that his son was going through, and that, they attempted to get help for him, but there was not the resources in the community to help him long term. And so then when this happened, it's not an excuse, but he has some compassion for his son because he recognizes that his son was going through something. Mm-hmm. And so these are the cases, and this is the dynamics of family that, it's tough. These are hard cases to try, because if this were any other, like, let's say, individual who, wasn't related to the decedents, then it's easy for us to, like, we're going to go hard, we're going to ask for their max, Yeah. But when it's a relative, and then when the next of kin is also advocating in some respects for his son, that's a different conversation that we have to have. And honestly, I don't want to ever have those conversations, because that shouldn't happen. Parents shouldn't kill their children. Children shouldn't kill their parents. But that's where we find ourselves. That's why we are coming together to really focus on bringing resources directly to families who need it.
Let me ask you real quick, because I know you have an event coming up, and before the break, I wanted you to have an opportunity to quickly share that with us. Tell me about that event that is coming up.
So we have two events coming up, but one of them, the first one, is this Saturday, October 12th at Allen Pond Park. This is our 5th annual Purple Bike Ride. I'm so excited about this. This is an opportunity for community to come together to show our victims and survivors that we care and that we are riding with and for them. And so that event, it's going to be at Allen Pond Park in Bowie, Maryland, this Saturday, October 12th. The ride starts at 8 o'clock. So we ask that folks get there around 7:30, 7:45 to get registered and to get in line. It's going to be a great ride. We have 3 different rides. One is 30 miles for the advanced riders. Then we have a 10-mile ride and a fun ride of 3 miles, which I think I'm participating in this year.
Okay. Well, real quick, and because this information will be posted on our website, and we're going to share this again, but I've got 10 seconds. What's the other one? Where is it? And when is it, please?
The other one is our 7th annual Not One campaign against domestic violence, and that will be held at Evangel Cathedral on October 29th at 6:30 p.m.
We are going to talk about that more on the other side after we take a very, very quick break. Don't forget, you can hear this and every edition of the Daily Drum Insight segment via podcast on WHUR.com. The original Quiet Storm is next. That's on WHUR-FM. I'm Harold Fisher. This conversation continues on Sirius XM Channel 141 and 96.3 HD2 in just a few seconds. Welcome back to the Daily Drum on Sirius XM Channel 141. I'm Harold Fisher. We continue our conversation about domestic violence issues in Prince George's County. My guest is the county's top prosecutor, Aisha Braveboy, Prince George's County State's attorney. I want to continue with kind of the root cause, because I think you have, and you know this, and you touched on this earlier. You have people who may have substance abuse problems. You may have people who are perhaps dealing with some mental health issues. But then I'm sure there is a subset of people who are perpetrators of domestic violence who don't have substance abuse issues, who don't have mental health issues, who have good jobs and look good at church on Sunday, and they get the cars fixed and they love their mamas and everything else. And yet they are perpetrators. And I guess I'm not just asking for our listeners, but I'm also asking for myself, because I often wonder, it is very difficult for me to wrap my head around even the non, I mean, obviously you have deadly violence, horrific, and everyone can simply agree that's terrible. But beyond arguing with your partner, beyond arguing with your parents, beyond having a disagreement with your child, but and in my mind, I just don't understand why some people take it to the next level where it becomes abusive, where it becomes, as you've seen, criminal. And I guess I'm trying to figure out, why are so many people still crossing that line, particularly those who should know better?
I really wish I had the answer to that, because if we had an answer to that, then maybe we could save more lives and prevent people from going down this path. But what we can only tell you is like characteristics of what we see. People who are narcissistic, they think the world revolves around them. People who have some entitlement, complex. People who are insecure. So they want to control the person that they purport to love, because they don't want that person to get away from them. They're jealous of sometimes even the person that they're supposed to be in that partnership with. And then they're jealous of others because they feel inferior in so many ways to other people. And so they want to show their strength by being abusive and aggressive, being able to control their anger. Sometimes people are struggle with being able to control their anger, but all of these things are things that people have to recognize for themselves are issues and go get help. So, when you're dealing with addiction or mental health, sometimes people are not recognizing that they need help because they're in a manic state. But for those individuals, the majority who have what we consider personality disorders, that's something that they know that they can address. And when they don't address it and they let it get out of hand, well, that's not an excuse for the abuse that you inflict upon someone else. So I recognize that people in our society might have things that happen to them that may be traumatic or may inform their behavior. But once they notice that behavior is a danger to someone else or even themselves, then they have to go get help. It's not okay not to get help. And that's why our hashtag here is say help. It's not
Say it again. It's what the
called
hashtag
Stay
is.
Help.
What?
Stay
Stay,
Help.
stay
Say,
healthy.
say, help.
Oh, stay
That's
healthy. Okay.
for, yeah, that's for the person who's being abused. And it's also for the abuser. If you need help, you better say help and let us help you. Because if in fact you do end up abusing someone, my job is to prosecute you, and that's what will happen. And all of the issues and excuses and reasons you want to give me, I will listen to that, but I'm not going to necessarily make that be a reason why we don't move forward, because now you have inflicted whatever hurt, pain, and whatever else you're going through onto someone else, and that's not okay. So, but I don't want to make light of it, but we do have um, a lot of people who want to make excuses for their behavior. I think that there are reasons why people act certain ways. I think that you can probably explain it, but that doesn't mean it's okay. It just means that they needed to get help. And the county has lots of different resources. We have so many partners. In fact, we have this. I want to shout out our tremendous partner, Metalworks. They're a full service mental health and addiction treatment center located right in Largo, and they take anyone, and they help you. If you don't have insurance, they'll help you apply for insurance so that their services can be covered. But there's no excuse now. The federal government, our state and local officials have worked very hard to provide parity between mental health and physical health. And so the insurance is covering a lot of the costs for the treatment that people need, but they have to ask for that help.
Let me ask you about a conversation I had with Sheriff John Carr last month,
Mhm.
where he, and obviously, I'm sure you're well aware that he was saying that the sheriff's department is no longer necessarily the first responders for domestic violence, and that those responsibilities have switched over to the Prince George's County Police Department. Um, does that make a difference from your perspective? And what what does it what does it mean for the police department to now have to kind of ramp up their training to deal with these domestic violence incidents as first responders? And certainly this is nothing new to police, Prince
Sure.
George's or anywhere. I mean, they've been doing that a long time.
Yeah. Now, just so that we're clear, districts, I believe 4, 3, and 8 used to be responded to by the Prince George's County Sheriff's Office. The rest of the police, oh, sorry, it's now called divisions. The rest of the divisions were the police were the first responders. Now, it just so happened that districts 3, 8, and 4 historically had the majority of those calls, of those domestic calls. So police officers have been trained to respond to domestic calls. Our Prince George's County Police Department. Where I see a missed opportunity, and I'm hopeful as we move forward, we'll see some changes, is that the sheriff's office, because of the nature of the sheriff's office and some of the other issues that they deal with, like they respond to the emergency psychological services petitions as well, that they're used to dealing with difficult family dynamics, right? And so when you're going on a domestic call, there's a certain I guess way that you have to respond to ensure that the person who's being abused feels comfortable sharing their story, and that the abuser doesn't fly off the handle, right? We want to make sure that it's a safe response. And we also want to make sure we have that follow up. And the sheriff's department has a lot of victims advocates as part of their office, and so they're really able to really take someone who has been abused, walk them through the process, handhold them, be there for them, where you have one person sort of navigating and guiding them through the process until, of course, they reach our office. They hand the victim off to us, and then we're able to move forward. So I really like the amount of resources that the sheriff's office actually has when you look at who is best to respond to those types of cases. But then, the issue of money comes into play, which is, are you going to fund that for our sheriff's office, along with the other responsibilities that they have for the courts as well? And I think the short answer is we got to find a way at some point, because I do think that they're in the best position and they have more time to respond to these calls. Whereas the police department, because we have police who are doing 12-hour shifts now. When they go to a call like this, they may not spend the time that's needed, not because they don't want to, but because they simply can't. They got other calls to respond to. So I think for so many reasons, because you do need time when you're responding to these types of calls, I think that in so many ways, the sheriff's office provides just a better overall response. And so my hope is that we continue this conversation in the future, and hopefully things will evolve.
From a citizen standpoint, because I know you're not just speaking just as the top prosecutor, but also as an administrator, just like Sheriff Carr, when we had this
Yeah.
conversation, he's not just speaking as the sheriff, but he's also speaking as an administrator. But if I need help, I'm going to dial 911, and it's first come, first serve. Sheriff, police, that
Yeah.
I just need help. How as a citizen would I know the difference? And as
Well,
I
if you call 911, if you call 911, I mean, there will be a response from the police agency that is the first responder for your area. So that may be Prince George's County Police. It also could be a municipal police agency if you live within a municipality. But the dispatch will direct those calls based on your address.
Yeah, but if I'm outside of those divisions, as you said, and I called 911, and I say, my partner or my wife or my girlfriend, whatever, is threatening me. If I'm out of those areas, does that mean that the sheriff may come?
Well, remember, the county is broken up into 7 different police divisions. So you're going to fall within one of those divisions if you live in Prince George's County. If you happen to also be within a municipality, then you will likely get routed to your local municipal police.
Well, that's important to know. You said something earlier, and I have a question about this also. We were talking about a parent abusing a child, and as we know, and we saw just last week or late last month, this horrific case about a mother who's accused of shooting her 13-year-old daughter, which is just really difficult for me to even comprehend. And of course, the other cases, an estranged boyfriend was accused of shooting the mother of his infant twins while she was breastfeeding. But I want to talk about parents. And if I may, you and I are old enough to remember that there were certain disciplinary measures that our parents may have used with us, that, and this is a whole nother conversation, as you know, but you can call it spankings, whooping, whipping, whatever part of the country your parents are from, that now would or may be considered abuse. How do you, as a prosecutor, address what is and what is not abuse in 2024 that would not have been considered abuse in 1974 or 1984
Mm,
because I turned out okay. So
I
did
think
you.
you did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, legally, how do you determine that?
Well, legally, parents can discipline their children the way that they see fit within uh, under certain circumstances. Like they
That's my point.
cannot.
Yeah. What are the
Yeah,
circumstances?
I mean, I think if you smacked your child across the face, I think absolutely that's considered an assault. If parents are spanking their children, which we don't get a lot of those cases, to be honest with you, of just a parent applying a hand or belt or whatever. We haven't really had those cases where you're leaving marks on your child, where there are open wounds on your child, where children are being subjected to real neglect, like they're being locked in rooms for days and, things like that, with torture. Um, Most people know the difference, honestly, and we as prosecutors, we exercise what we try to call common sense, right? So we recognize when a child may be upset because the parent disciplined them in a way that they didn't want to be, but it was appropriate or it was acceptable under the circumstances. So we haven't really had to deal with a lot of that. What we have really dealt with are things like you just talked about, like a parent taking it to the extreme. And in that case, the mother is alleged to have shot her daughter in the neck. And that is completely unacceptable under all circumstances.
Absolutely. Yeah. The other thing, and I think this is really, really important as our communities continue to evolve. And I know that uh, the District of Columbia, a decade ago or so, had received a whole lot of criticism from the LGBTQ community in reference to crimes committed against members of that community as it relates to addressing domestic violence cases. Uh,
Mhm.
what what is your office doing to address and be more sensitive to those communities, and not just LGBTQ? That's the first thing that kind of comes to mind. There are other marginalized communities, obviously, uh, but specifically I want to talk about LGBTQ because no matter what, and I'm speaking to some of our listeners who have over the years given me a whole lot of pushback even talking about this issue. But the reality is, it is a community. These are viable members of our community, productive
Absolutely.
members of our community. Um, but there are, there are certain sensitivities that all government entities need to have in dealing with that.
Yeah, I think there's general underreporting of domestic violence that occurs in our community that is not heterosexual, intimate partner relationships.
This
So I
gender,
think I think in general, family violence with, besides intimate partner, other family violence is way underreported. I think that violence against our seniors is underreported. Violence in the LGBTQIA plus community is also underreported, we believe. However, one of the things that I did when I came in as state's attorney is I created an LGBTQIA plus task force. That task force specifically is there to let the community know that their concerns are my concerns, right? That I care about getting justice for you without regard to your sexuality, your faith, who you are, how you want to be addressed. The fact that you are a human being gives you certain rights that I respect and that I will defend. And so we have gotten the word out through that task force. In fact, I made very public it wasn't domestic abuse case, but it was a transgender death case where an individual from our transgender community was killed. And when we indicted that case, I made it very public, not just because it was a horrendous case that occurred in our community, it was, but also I wanted to send a message to our entire community that the life of this transgendered woman was as important as anyone else's life in our community. And so my hope in doing that was to send the message to the LGBTQIA plus community that this office cares about you. If you are a victim, please come forward. We will stand up for you. We will fight to get you justice.
And what about addressing the immigrant community?
Yes.
It is a growing community. This is not a political question. This is a reality question. Prince George's like Northern Virginia and Montgomery County, the surrounding counties around DC. These are really diverse communities, and I'm sure that there are all kinds of challenges and problems that your office has had to face, whether it's cultural, language, even, my goodness, intra-racial prejudice. For example, how are you dealing with the growth of the immigrant communities?
Absolutely. Look, my father's an immigrant. He immigrated here from Grenada. So I know firsthand the size and the strength of our immigrant community. And then I think there's a lot of dynamics that go on in the immigrant community because some individuals are not here documented, right? And so when they're not documented and their families aren't documented either, they are intimidated oftentimes to come to law enforcement because they think that they'll be sent home, right? Or they think that, well, the abuser will be sent back and will be deported, and the abuser is the breadwinner in the family. So how will we survive essentially without this abuser in the home? So those are some of the dynamics that occur when you're dealing with immigrant communities. In addition to that, we have had cases where the victim, sometimes they're minors or very young, sometimes they're young adults because they're afraid to come forward when they're minors, will come forward and say, this happened to me. And the non-abusing parent won't support them. I've had that personally. I was walking through the courthouse one day, and this young woman was running through the courthouse crying, young Hispanic woman. And I didn't know who she was. I just opened up my arms and she just ran and she collapsed in my arms. And she happened to be a witness who was on the stand. She was being cross-examined. She just couldn't take, the questioning, and she had ran off the witness stand and out into the hallway, and I just happened to run into her. But I also found out in talking with her that she was there because she had been abused, and then she did not seek justice for herself. But then when she found out that her younger relative was also being abused by the same person, well, she finally wanted to step up for herself and for her younger relative. And when that happened, other older relatives, including her mother, did not support her in getting justice. But we were there for her. And we were there for the other younger victim as well. So, yeah, I mean, what I would say is that it's tough. I know it's tough. But please come forward. we will find support systems for you. But you should not have to live with an abuser. Don't do that. Don't put yourself in a situation where you're constantly living in fear, because then you're not really living, you're just existing. We want people to live, to achieve their dreams, to live without fear. It's tough, but those situations are very, very tough. But like I said, we recognize we have to message to our multicultural community. I have created a multicultural alliance. We have over 37 countries represented in that alliance. I do go out a lot and speak to communities. We have a large Hispanic community, as you know. We also have a very large and active West Indian community, as well as African community here.
Yeah.
So, and in fact, about 40 or so percent of all Black-owned businesses in our county are African-owned. So that tells us that community is continuing to grow, and they plan to stay here. And we have to continue to message to them about not just the business opportunities, but also opportunities to get justice.
Before I let you go, I wanted to ask you about a non-domestic violence incident. The change in policy regarding the detention of violent juvenile defenders made by the Department of Juvenile Services in the state. Your thoughts about that? What difference do you think it's going to make, if any?
Well, I think it will make a difference because, number one, it should have been the policy all along. If a child has committed a violent offense and they're out on probation or out on ankle monitor and they commit another offense, the idea that they just get to go home is absolutely ridiculous. So the fact that the department is putting in what I think are common sense measures to protect the public and also to give that child a better opportunity to understand what they did was wrong and that there are consequences for actions and help them to correct their behavior. I mean, I think it's a step in the right direction. I think that making sure that those who are on monitor are complying, and when they don't comply, informing the courts so that the court can take appropriate steps to ensure the safety of our community. That's where we should be. So I would say let's see how it works in 6 months. Bring me back and we can talk about it.
Absolutely. As I mentioned, we will make sure that we post along with this conversation on our website the information about the two events that are coming up. Prince George's County State's Attorney Aisha Bravoy, thank you so much for talking
Thank
to
you
me.
so much for having me.
Absolutely, and make sure you and your team stay safe.
Awesome, you too. Thank you.
That is the Daily Drum for this Monday, October 7th. I'm Harold Fisher.